Good afternoon, my name is Robert McGregor from Steam Powered Education, and today in the tutorial that I've designed you're going to learn how to make a Spitfire. Throughout the tutorial you'll notice that there are sections that will give you tips along the way on how to make the best model you possibly can. So in today's tutorial we're going to make this Spitfire. Okay, so this is the one I made and hopefully you'll see how it's made and how it's made to pretty much, well, the best possible way I can possibly make it, and hopefully you'll be able to do the same. Okay, so you can see the front cover. You've got paints, you've got glue, you've got a paintbrush. This is called a starter kit, and Revell make these starter kits. Airfix also make these starter kits, and it's a very, very good way to get yourself into model making, especially if you don't have glue and paint and brushes yet. So the brush here they've got is a double-sided brush. You've got a small and a large bit. Then you've got the scale 1 to 72, and then if we remove it, you can see that inside we've got obviously a lot of detail. 1 to 72, skill mark 3, level 3, but it says supposedly 100 pieces or more, but I don't think it's got 100 pieces. There's some information on the side there. The information is about the Spitfire, and it's got Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. It was first introduced in 1938, and it was one of the preeminent British fighter planes of the Second World War. Okay, so let's look inside the box. Inside the box is the two sprues. That's SPRUE, and they're very important. Obviously they contain all the pieces, and inside also are the instructions, and I'm looking for the decals at the moment. Decals should be in there. There they are. So I'm going to use those later. Those are very, very important. They put the icing on the cake of your model. Okay, and inside are the instructions. First of all, though, I need to find out the painting instructions. There they are at the front. You've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and they refer to little paints that you use. It looks like we have A, B, and C, which are sort of mid blue, sort of green and a grey. So we don't seem to have the rest of them, but I can find them from my model set. Okay, moving on. A few instructions there on just sticking things together, and then the main instructions. Okay, so you can see I'm pointing to a lot of letters that correspond to the colors, and the first thing I like to do always is paint on the sprues. So I'm going to get those out, and I'm going to paint on the sprues. Obviously I only have A, B, and C, but I can find the other colors. Okay, so there are 2 sprues only, and there's the canopy, just looking at there, and that's obviously the main wing section. Okay, I'm going to get the paints out now. Those are A, B, and C, the sort of mid-blue, grey, and green. And looks like, at the moment, for the time being anyway, that I don't need any of those paints. So I'm going to put those to the side. Oh, first of all, I'll just show you how to paint, how to stir the paints. Now, it sounds like an easy task, but very quickly, if you stir them, if you forget to stir them, you won't realize what color they are, and you'll see that as I'm stirring this is changing color. So what happens is when they've been stowed for a long time, this has been 5 years in my garage, the various chemicals separate, and you can see I'm taking some of them from the top as well, and therefore you just don't get a true representation of what the color is until you mix it all back together. And you can see I'm mixing for quite some time. I'm not just sort of giving it a couple of stirs and then thinking that's fine. The reason being is, as I said, it's been sitting for so long that all the kind of chemicals have separated. You need to mix them back together so you have a nice rich color. Yes, I'm getting paint all over my brush, but that is just, part of the thing you've got to bear in mind. You've got to stir it thoroughly. I'm just trying to put the paint back in now. Okay, I'm going to get the water now. I'm going to put the paintbrush inside the water. I'm not going to put too much dab it around in the water. I'm going to dab it on the tissue instead. And that you can then see very quickly when the brush is clean. It starts to get waterier and waterier, and then eventually the brush is good for another different type of paint. Try not to get the water too polluted because you might be using it for all sorts of things. I'll show you later. Schwarz is black, that's G, and stone grey, greenish grey, stone grey and black. I can do the black easily, so let's try and do that first. Let's see if I can find the black. Okay, here I am, just painting all the black bits on the sprues, just looking for all the different bits that you have to paint, and you can see I'm making a mess of the instructions, but that's okay as long as I'm not painting over the actual instruction important bits. Starting with number 1, I'm going to stick all of that together in a sec, but here I've got some decals on number 2, and these are these here. Now, it's not often you see that. Sometimes you just sort of miss out what this is, but here they specifically just said, okay, number 2 is just decals. They've painted it in that color, G and F, and they want you to put these tiny little decals. This is the cockpit controls, which I think is a fascinating little addition to it. Makes it look, the cockpit, really cool. Unfortunately, you can't see much of it when you put the canopy over the top. So what I like to just cut it out from the decals, because you don't want to put all of them in there. You don't want them all floating around. So you just cut it out and then put it in the water. You leave it for about a minute. So what I can do is, whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I can do number 1. So number 1, you need, it will say number 4, which is this one here, and it's fairly obvious which one that one is, which I've painted already, and number 26, which is on the other sprue. Interestingly, they don't say which sprue is which. They should. Technically, it's a good idea to tell you which sprue it's on, because otherwise you waste a lot of time trying to look for these things. So that's that bit there. That's that one there, 26. Cut that out. And also the one next to it is, let's just try and get that off. Yeah, these little bits are usually bits that you can just fold off. That's not relevant. And then there's this one here, which is number 25 there. So I'm going to cut that off there. Now, sometimes they have little bits on them. You need to get the little bits off with a scalpel. You can sometimes use a piece of little piece of sandpaper. Right, so joining these together, you need to practice joining them together. Don't just go ahead and do it. See, this has got a little hole there. I know that that hole is actually there rather than here. Now that hole might be relevant, so don't want to mess with getting that in the wrong position. This also needs a bit of scraping because sometimes the glue doesn't stick. Speaking of glue, okay, there's a glue here. Now I'm not sure I really like these glues. They look really good, but they take forever to work properly. I'm sure there's a technique that I'm missing, but there we are. It's coming out now. It's coming out loads now. All right, so there's, you can put your little glue. You see it's coming out quite a lot now. I've just overdone it. I'm squeezing it. I don't want that much. Just try and get it off. Just want a bit. Just want a dab. Again, not sticking anything major to anything else, so I don't want to get too much glue on it. There we are. Done that. And then the last bit goes behind his seat. Now I think this is something to do with radio communication. And you can see it goes on the back here. You've got two little nodules there. Just stick those on there. And then there you go. Now, it's not sticking very well. And it probably won't for a while, so I'm going to leave that like that for the time being. Now, hopefully our decals should be ready. And they go on to, okay, put the glue back on. They go on to this little bit here, which I'm going to sort of twist off because I haven't got the use of the scalpel at the moment. Use it for something else. So let's get the decals out. They've been in there for a couple of minutes. Should be easy to come out now. Come on then. There we go. Now I like to use a paintbrush to get the decals off. Now I put it right next to the thing that I'm trying to get it onto, and you'll see it just lifts nicely with the paintbrush. You get the little paintbrush hairs underneath it, and it lifts off, and then you can just slide it on. It's beautiful. Now I sometimes twist the paintbrush a bit, and it should go on. Come on, let's go. There we go. See, there's a gap there at the top. Now, get a little bit more water on that, just because it's not really sticking very well. That's good. Water off. Let's push it into position. It's much easier when there's a bit of water on it, just to help slide it into position. And when you're happy, you can get the water off by, there we go, by drying your brush and just literally drawing off the water very carefully because you don't want to change the position. It's not sitting very nicely. We'll see. Well, leave that to dry and see how it comes out. Got to the stage, whoops, where I've put the wings on. I've painted the underneath. Needs a bit of a touch up there. I've put the fuselage together, and I put the little cockpit in there with the joystick and the seat and the radio communication thing at the back. So I'm on to section 6, 6A. 6A and 6B. So you've got the left and the right wheel. I think that's the left and the right wheel. Yeah, it's the left, or the port wheel and the starboard wheel, they might call them. Okay, But now it has these little symbols there. It means to glue them. You glue them in place, they don't turn. So these things are particularly delicate. I find that if you want them down, do be prepared to be very, very careful with the way they stand. How many times I've broken off wheels and had to stick them back, and they're very difficult to stick back on. So let's get the wheels then. So I've painted the wheels there already, and obviously they'll need a bit of a touch up later, but at least I've done the majority of the work there. Now when I'm cutting, make sure small pieces you hold them down because they tend to go ping and fly off. Then we need 6 and 10. Let's make sure that we get the right wheels. Well, those don't matter too much, but you have to always 9 and 10. It's 9 and 10, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so 9. Check that that's going to be the. It's very important that you do not just cut out 2 wheels, or two of these, because you get the wrong one, and it's on the wrong side, and you wonder why. Okay, so that was 9. That goes with 11. Let's see, it goes 9 goes with 11. So make sure you get those. That's 11. Don't do 12 because that will be on the other one, and they'll look a bit odd. And then 7. The 2 wheels are pretty much identical, but you do need to get these right. And be very careful not to cut out the wrong part here. I think cut right to the end there because I think it probably sticks in. This is really difficult to see where that ends. Oh yes, right, so that's on that side there. So right near the end, cut it there, like that. So one of these wheels. Okay, so stuck the wings on, stuck the engine exhaust on, I've stuck the tailplane on, and so the tail wings on. I've stuck these sort of nodules up there, those nodules on there, and now we're on to sticking the wheels on. The wheels should have dried by now. Yeah, they're a bit better, easier. So let's see, now we need to get these in the right position. So 6A and 6B, I'm not sure which is which, but I know what angle they're supposed to be at. Yeah, so you'll see the angle there, and if you orientate the machine to the same direction as your instructions, you can find out that this one is actually 6B, and that's the port wing. Pretty much done everything now, except the canopy, which is this. Okay, so I've put the guns on, I've put the rotor blade on. That's quite tricky, and you can see it's not actually very loose at the moment. I'm just trying to loosen it up a bit. Sometimes it gets a tiny bit of glue in there, and yeah, it starts to gum up. So I'm going to have to keep loosening that. Okay, I've done the aerial, radio communication aerial. Done obviously the wheels. There's also a little, I think that's a speed indicator or wind speed indicator. There, I've done the rear tail wheel. And so it just remains for the pilot, not the pilot, the canopy, sorry, there's no pilot. It's a shame that Revell don't tend to do the pilots with them. Okay, now really carefully with the canopy. This is one of the trickier aspects of making a model, because it's so easy to get glue all over the damn thing, and that just ruins the look, totally ruins the look. I'm just peeling off the last of whatever that is. Okay, so you do not want to get glue on your fingers. Just don't get glue on your fingers. If you get glue on your fingers, that's it. You've got glue on the canopy. Okay, so very carefully. Let's try. Yeah, there we go. We just got just enough, tiny bit of glue around the outside. Okay. And just use my other finger here just to make sure I don't get it dripping down the side. Right, now I haven't got any glue on this finger. Sometimes it might pay to use a pair of tweezers. Okay, make sure I've got no glue on there. That's it, perfect. Just one tiny, just there we go. Perfect, lovely. Okay, now we can paint that. This is a bit wobbly still, this. I don't quite know why it's still wobbly. Just not sticking properly. Okay, well, we'll just have to be wary of that. Right, now, so on with the painting. I've just hit the speed indicator. Okay, so we're just on to the camouflage now, which I always find the best bit, apart from the decals. I think the decals are the most exciting. So I'm just making sure I orientate the picture to my camouflage I'm doing. So I've painted it one color already, and now I'm doing the camouflage over the top of the color, which is just about dry. So, what does it require? Now, there are lots of decals here, as you can see, but we only want, I think we'll do the top part first. Okay, so we need 36, which is, no it isn't, yeah, 36, 32 and 33, oh, 36, there we go. So it is these big ones here, 36, and we'll take those two out first and put those on first. So I'll take them out, just making sure you don't cut through it. Again, I only like to do one thing at a time. I don't like to do I don't like to do too many decals at the time, because obviously they slosh about and they start floating about in the liquid. That's not very good, because obviously if it's floating about in the liquid, they're going to lose their stickiness. Okay, so we'll put that over there. We'll see if we can get another set out whilst those are that's the right position for it, and it's fairly straight. Let's try the other side. Be very careful not to touch the decals. It's very, very easy to forget where you are, where you're putting your fingers. Yep, so easy. Okay, this is a technique that I learnt a long, long time ago. It's a little bit dangerous. Get a piece of the old sprue and get a light match, and you light the end. Don't want to be anywhere near. Then blow it out, and then for the wire, there we go. And we've got just a little choppy chop chop. Haven't got anything there, but when it dries, you'll see, and it's cooling now, very instant aerial. Okay, almost complete. Last thing we want to do is the lines on the canopy. Perhaps we should have done them before, but I'm going to have a go at doing the rim there, and there's also a kind of ridge there. That just completes the whole thing. You can see all the detail of all the tiny writings on the side. You probably can't see that very well, but there's lots of writing on the sides. There's a sort of, that one says, can you get the black out? This is a really tricky section now. You've just got to be really steady-handed. Got to get the exact right amount of paint on your brush. It's just attached too much. Don't want to make it go over the edge. And then you just got to very, very, very carefully. Okay, and here are the 6 Spitfires that I've made. And there's a close-up with an air traffic control tower and a background just to make it a little bit more interesting, and somebody there with binoculars on top, and 1 or 2 other Spitfires in the background. Okay, here are all the Spitfires I've made. I think that one was actually bought. It's pretty impressive. But there's a reconnaissance Spitfire with a little window in the background, in the back, to take photographs. That's a sort of an older version of the Spitfire, sort of Mark 1, I think it is. Here's the clipped wing version. That's the Revel one I made, and this is the Revel one I made today. So they're pretty much the same, except I used AZ this time, and this is the AE version, so you can see they're pretty much the same. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this Spitfire making. That is all I have today, and hopefully you'll get something out of this. I've tried to speed up the bits that are a little bit slow. If it's still boring, please tell me, and I hope to get back in the saddle, so to speak, with steam-powered education when the coronavirus has ended.